This is a story about how I almost moved into a life that wasn't mine, and how I found out by accident. At the time, I didn't think anything was wrong. Everything felt steady, normal, and planned out. That's important to say first, because nothing about this started with suspicion or fear. It started with excitement. I rented the apartment without seeing it in person, which I know sounds risky, but it didn't feel that way then. The landlord was responsive, the photos looked exactly like what I wanted, and the timing made sense for where my life was going. I was relocating, starting fresh, and my boyfriend was supportive in all the right ways. He helped me talk through the decision, helped with the move, and even joked that it might turn into our place one day. Moving in felt like a milestone, not a mistake. The apartment was clean, empty, and quiet. Almost too quiet, but in a peaceful way. I unpacked slowly, enjoying the idea that none of the memories in that space belonged to anyone else anymore. The first strange thing didn't feel strange at all. It was just mail. When I checked the mailbox on my first day, there was a small stack of envelopes addressed to someone else. I assumed it was left over from the previous tenant, and that happens all the time. I brought it inside, set it neatly on the counter, and went back to unpacking. Over the next few days, more mail arrived. Same name, different senders. Banks, offices, places that looked official. It wasn't alarming, just confusing. I remember thinking how odd it was that someone could leave so abruptly without changing their address. I even mentioned it casually to my boyfriend, laughing it off. He barely reacted, just said it happens and changed the subject. At the time, that felt normal too. A few days later, I noticed a padded envelope mixed in with the paper mail. It felt heavier when I picked it up. I stood in the kitchen turning it over in my hands, wondering why someone would send something valuable through regular mail. I didn't open it right away. I told myself it wasn't mine and I shouldn't be touching it. But curiosity has a way of growing when something doesn't sit right. That night, alone in the apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, I opened it. Inside was an engagement ring. There was no note, no explanation, just the ring, carefully wrapped like it had once meant something important. I sat on the floor holding it, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. My first thought wasn't another woman, it was confusion. Why would someone mail an engagement ring back to this apartment? Was she returning it to a jeweler, sending it back to an ex? Had it been mailed to the wrong address? I needed context because none of it made sense on its own. So I went back to the rest of the mail and opened one of the letters that came with it. And that's when everything started to make sense. I picked one of the letters at random. It was already opened, like someone had started reading it and stopped halfway through. The paper was folded neatly, intentional. The first few lines were formal, almost stiff, which made it feel older than it probably was. It talked about the lease, about responsibilities, about plans that had fallen through. Then the tone shifted. She started writing like someone who had already cried and was past the shock. She wrote about trusting someone who promised consistency, about moving cities for a man who always had a reason he couldn't fully show up. Then I saw his name, my boyfriend's name, not a nickname, not a coincidence, his full name, spelled exactly right. My chest went cold before my brain could catch up. I kept reading even though I already knew the truth was coming. She wrote that she was engaged to him, that they had plans, that he convinced her to move out quickly when things got complicated, that this apartment was supposed to be temporary, a backup. She said he told her not to worry, that he had options and would figure things out. I remember laughing once, short and hollow, because I realized I was reading my own future written by someone else. I went through the rest of the letter slowly after that, like pacing myself through bad news. Different dates, different cities, different versions of the same man, promises made and half kept, plans delayed, always a reason, always paperwork involved. She explained the ring then. She said she mailed it back because she didn't want to keep anything that tied her to him, but she also didn't want him to pretend it never existed. She wanted it waiting for him, physical proof. She wrote that he treated relationships like leverage, that he talked about women in terms of convenience, that the apartment lease was supposed to protect him in case one situation fell apart. I sat there realizing I wasn't the main plan. I wasn't even the next one. I was the safety net, the stable one, the one with good credit and steady money, and a willingness to believe. I thought about every time I paid for something without question, every time I justified his distance, every time I told myself love looks different as you get older. I didn't confront him that night. I didn't call him. I didn't cry the way you'd expect. I went into problem-solving mode. I took pictures of everything, the letters, the ring, the envelope with the postmark. I called the landlord the next morning and asked specific questions this time. Different questions. He hesitated longer than before. That told me everything. I contacted a lawyer before I even packed another box. Quietly, methodically, I found out the lease wasn't as solid as I thought. Turns out, promises made in overlapping lives don't hold up well under scrutiny. I packed my things slowly, carefully, like I was undoing a mistake without letting it explode. On moving day, I left one thing behind on the counter, a copy of the letter, the last page highlighted, the part where she wrote, "I'll see you in court." I didn't leave a note of my own. I didn't need to. When he called later, confused, panicked, asking what was going on, I didn't answer. There was nothing left to explain. Months later, I heard how it played out. The engagement he tried to resurrect didn't survive the truth. The financial stability he relied on vanished overnight. The apartment stopped being an option. The ring came back to him heavier than before. I still live in the same city. Sometimes I see him around. He always looks like he wants to say something, like maybe I owe him closure. I don't. I smile politely if our eyes meet. I look settled, unrushed, whole. He lost a future he thought he could control. I walked away from one I never agreed to. And every time I check my mail now, I open it slowly, knowing some things don't arrive by accident.